Professor Shailendra Mohan, Director, CIL, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a great pleasure and honor to have Professor Liudmila Khokhlova speak today in the 53rd Foundation Day Lecture Series. I welcome all of you on behalf of the CIL. Today is indeed a very special day. Not only we commemorate the 53rd Foundation Day of the Institute, which is going on since July 17, 2021. We continue that. We have the 28th lecture with us. But today is very special in two other ways. We have a speaker from Russia, and today incidentally happens to be the Russian Orthodox Church Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas to Liudmila and all our Russian colleagues.
Thank you very much.
Across the world for this wonderful day. And the third event today we would like to commemorate is Professor Omkar Nath Kaul's birthday. Like Professor Omkar Naul was one of our deputy directors. He was also a former director for a few years. So it's indeed a great honor to remember such a legendary figure in linguistics, especially Kashmiri linguistics, who passed away a few years back. But of course, he's always with us. And we thought we should host a lecture by one of his friends on his birthday, because Professor Kaul's soul was always attached to the institute. Like, as many of you know, the last academic program he attended was in the institute. Liudmila was with us. Boris, Liudmila, and others, they were with us. So I thought it would be nice, it's not a coincidence, but we planned it in such a way that we wanted one of his friends, and it happened to be the lucky Professor Khokhlova to do this honor for her friend, Omkar Nath Kaulji. So, as you know, Professor Khokhlova works as a professor at the Department of Indian Philology, Institute of Asian and African Studies, Moscow State University. Many of you already know that she's an expert in Hindi. She had her master's from Moscow State University in Hindi in 1970. So, the institute was just 2 years old when she already got her master's in Hindi. And afterwards, she proceeded to do her PhD in Indian linguistics from the Institute of Linguistics, Academy of Sciences in Moscow. Her thesis was on a very wonderful topic, comparative grammar of Hindi and Rajasthani. She has taught several courses and she continues teaching general linguistics, Hindi at BA and MA levels, Urdu, Punjabi. Then also she is a typologist, as many of you know, specializing in Western Indo-Aryan languages. And in fact, the topic she chose for today is also related to the lexical typological study of two semantic fields in Western Indo-Aryan. She has several awards. I would like to mention a couple of them here. She was awarded her contribution to Hindi studies in Russia. She got 2 awards, one in 2005 and another in 2007. That was given by Indian government. And another, she won the award of Punjabi Saath in London for contribution into Punjabi studies in Russia. She has several publications to her credit, many in Russian language. Of course, all are related to Western Indo-Aryan. More than 22 articles are there. And then she has written also in English and Hindi. Even in Hindi, she has written quite a bit. Like some of her papers are published not only in India but also in other places. Like we published some of her articles in Indian linguistics back in 2003, when many universities like JNU, Osmania University, like even other publishers, Indian publishers, Sage and Motilal Banarsidas all have published her works, besides other international publishers in Spain and Oriental series and also United States. I think she has a lot of articles on different aspects of Indo-Aryan languages. And we are very happy and proud to invite you to deliver your lecture today. And also, in addition to whatever I have told about Professor Khokhlova, I must add that she's one of the co-founders of ICOSAL, the International Conference Series on South Asian Language and Literatures. Because as you know, ICOSAL was founded by Professor Omkarnath Kaul. I think Liudmila, Boris, and Omkarnath Kaul founded that over a cup of coffee. That's what I was told. So they started that, and we had a successful series of 13 conferences. So here we have one of the legendary figures who not only supports Indian linguistics in general, but who contributes and who visits India very frequently and works on several Indo-Aryan languages. She has visited the Central Institute of Indian Languages many times. And also, like, I think almost all of the conferences of ICOSAL, whenever it was held in India, she used to come. So I'm very happy that today you are with us virtually to commemorate three events. One is the CIL Foundation Day, and one is your own Christmas Day, and the third is our beloved Professor Kaul's birthday. So, with these few words, I once again invite you on behalf of the Institute and on behalf of everyone present here. Now I would request you to share your slides and begin your presentation. Please relax and you can just try to use the icon present now.
So thank you very much. That's a great honor for me to come again, though online, to your institute. I was Cole's friend for many years, and that's true that we made this plan of ICOSAL together. It was Cole's idea to call it like that, and now it became a tradition. And really, I hope he sees us from the heaven and knows that we will never forget him. So now I'll try to open my slides, yes, and speak about lexical typology in Russia. Так. Is it visible? Do you see my?
It's still.
Huh?
We see a dark black screen, but I think it's coming. Let us see.
Has it come?
Or do you? No, not yet. Do you want to try again?
That's what I was afraid of, that there
You
would be some...
you do the same. No, don't worry. Just feel, just relax. And you did it earlier, so it should be okay.
Так. No, it's written that my screen is visible, so I don't know.
You are showing us a wrong screen probably. We are seeing a dark black screen. So why don't you close this and try again? and you open your PowerPoint.
You know, when I press it, it's written that I should stop, but not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Okay, I'll stop it and start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So I press choose the screen.
You do this that present now, and you select your entire screen, and
Yes, then now allow.
you then press that PowerPoint. Something is coming.
Is it visible now?
Yes, now you do the same thing what you did earlier, that slideshow, and you give us the full screen.
No.
Yes, this
so
is perfect.
It's okay, yes?
Yes, it's perfect.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We hear you.
So
We can
I'm
see your
going
slide.
to speak.
Yes, please go on.
Okay. I'm happy that I managed to do it. So I'll speak about lexical typology and Moscow lexical group. Actually, there exist different approaches to lexical typology. There is a psycholinguistic approach. And the main question they ask, do speakers of different languages react to the same stimuli similarly or differently? And in this case, the stimuli need not exhaust all the possibilities, and the verbal response is viewed mainly as behavior. There is actually the most important works by these schools are well known. For instance, that is this cutting and breaking project, where the different native speakers were given different verbs, like were shown different pictures, and they had to use one of the verbs like cut, break, tear, smash, snap, etc. And they found out that the native speakers choose the verb on the basis of type of object, instrument, and type of instrument. And it's important how many parts come out after breaking, predictability, etc. So another very important approach is Cliff Goddard's and Anna Wierzbicka's, where they try to reduce all meanings in all languages to a small set of semantic primes. And words are contrasted not with words from other languages directly, but via their meta vocabulary. The Moscow Lexical Typology Group is using a frame-based approach to typological study. It is argued that semantic comparison should rely on a set of conceptual frames or prototypical situations that can be revealed through analysis of word combinability in natural texts. The core of the method is finding contexts in which a word can be replaced by a given near synonym, and actually the main task is to determine which properties prevent the substitution. To describe a domain, then, is to list all the frames covering it, and for each frame to find its explication in all of the chosen languages. It may seem that each domain is reduced to a set of oppositions as in component analysis, but that is not component analysis. Component analysis assumes features to be independent, while frames imply features that are interdependent. They fall into gestalts, often so closely knit together that selecting one argument restricts the other. For instance, if the subject of rotation is a bird, the axis is going to be external. Furthermore, a flying agent is moving not just around the landmark, but above it. It is interesting to compare grammatical and lexical typology. Grammatical typology requires several hundred languages, sometimes 400, which furthermore need to be distributed equally among genetic and areal groups. And closely related languages are almost never used, lest their similarities distort the general picture. The striking difference of lexical typology is in this respect that related languages tend to be just as valuable to it as unrelated languages. And it is easy to explain why it happens so. While grammatical constructions take centuries to evolve, vocabulary is much more fluid. A single generation of speakers may witness words falling in and out of use and word meanings changing dramatically. The methodology used by Moscow School, it's very traditional. It includes survey of dictionaries, corpora, the analysis of literature, prose and poetry, and work with the questionnaires. The most extensive of Moscow group projects, the domain of swimming and floating, which I'm going to speak about, covers 50 languages. And the vocabulary of pain, where I also participated, and covers 30 languages. Unfortunately, I and my students participated in many projects of this Moscow Typological School. The main representatives of it are Ekaterina Rakhilina and some others, for instance, Tatiana Reznikova, etc. And most of the works have been published. Some of the works were published in English, but not about Indian languages. The only paper that has been published is my paper, Expressions of Painful Sensations in Hindi, that is published in the Festschrift I forgot whose Festschrift it was, and it was alternative horizons.
Professor Panchanan Mohanty.
Yeah, exactly, Professor Panchanan Mohanty, and that is has been published, and now one more book will published, one more paper will published. That is on the project on falling verbs. So now I wanted to speak about this aqua motion project, which I was preparing together. Actually, my students were also participating, and Professor Charanjit Singh from JNU. We were doing it together, and Punjabi and Hindi was a lot of work on Punjabi and Hindi he has done. But of course, he was not a native speaker. He was my co-author, but there were native speakers of Punjabi, Rajasthani, and Gujarati. But the main focus was on Hindi. Common cross-linguistic frames for the described domain are active swimming, passively drifting with the current, floating on the surface, and the movement of vessels and people on vessels. And I would add one more, the movement of in the water up and down, ascent and descent. So there are some the slides made by my students. The first verb I'll discuss, that is the Hindi Urdu and Punjabi tar, Rajasthani tir, Gujarati tar, which has the main meaning self-propelled motion of an animate figure. And of course, both in Hindi, Gujarati, Punjabi, the examples will be very similar. Like some human being is swimming, the ducks are swimming in Punjabi. Then in Hindi, the kid is swimming to the shore. And in fact, Western New Indo-Aryan languages do not have special verbs referring to the movement of vessels. Sailing is usually described by general motion verbs like steamer, chalte, hing. There is a very general opinion which is expressed in the paper by Bhuvan and Narasimhan, that the verb Hindi ter may be used only with active figure. But that is not true. She even gives example, nauka uskinare teri. It's impossible. That is definitely, it is impossible. But it's not impossible because of nauka. It's impossible because pointing to the end point blocks the use of the verb ter, like ye jahaz kalkate ja raha hai. We can say, but we can't say ter raha hai. But ter and its cognates may be used for floating ships, boats, which was unexpected for me. Because we learned from the first year of the institute that it's impossible. For instance, झील के पूर्व किनारे से एक सेलबोट लहरों पर धीरे धीरे तैरती हुई दिखाई दी. It's and it's possible even when somebody is driving the vessel. For instance, वो पूरे जोर से नाव खे रहा था और नाव तेजी से तैरती हुई उस किनारे बढ़ रही थी. And what was even more surprising for us, that ter and its cognates may refer to motion of people aboard. For instance, अमृतक को किश्ती में पानी पार तैरते तैरते यूं ही बतकने की आदत हो गई है. समुद्र में किश्ती पार तैरते तैरते अमृतन ने देखा something. So, but what is more important for this verb and Hindi verb ter and its cognates is they may also refer to non-directional movement of inanimate objects. For instance, there is again a picture prepared by my students. उस पर फटे दोनों के टुकड़े, आइसक्रीम के कप, इस्तेमाल की जा चुकी चीजें तैर रही हैं. And also the तेल के धब्बे पानी पर तैर रहे हैं is also possible. And this is a very important meaning of this word, because most metaphors are derived from this meaning, not from the main meaning, which always come to our mind when we think about the verb terna. So the same things are maybe seen in Marwari. For instance, दूध में मलाई तरे है, the cream floats in milk. Or in Punjabi, tara hai do kapde dikhan girahi. That is the beginning of the poem. Passers-by will see two floating clothes. There may describe also vertical movement in water. For instance, मैंने गिलास में बर्फ डाली, जब मैंने पानी डाला तो बर्फ तैरकर ऊपर आ गई. But so the ice floated up. So we can see that if to return to our frames, there includes two frames, swimming and floating. Now let's go to direct meanings of Hindi Urdu Beh and its cognates in other languages we are describing. So it has two meanings. The first is water flow. For instance, the river can flow. Jamuna ji beh rahi hai. And it has the second meaning, passive drifting with the current. Like सड़क धूल कर साफ हो गई है, फालतू चीजें बहकर दूर चली गई हैं. And beh and its cognates can describe both horizontal and vertical movement of liquid. For instance, ओक भी क्या चीज है, 50% पानी तो यूं ही बह जाए और चाहिए सबको ठंडा पानी. So the water spills, and that also described by this verb. Now the verb dub and its cognates. It describes, first of all, immersion in water of involutional subject, but it can have one more meaning, to be covered with some liquid. For instance, बाल स्याह होटल में डूबे रहते हैं. And in this case, usually this liquid is usually not water. Again, it is a very important meaning because it is not frequent as direct meaning, but as metaphorical, it becomes rather frequent. In Punjabi, there is a verb rur that is used in addition to the verb vag. It's used to denote a passive drifting in a stream of water, but it denotes only the movement of object together with the flow of liquid, and it can't be used to describe the flow of the liquid itself. So here is an example about the corpses carried away by the water. Lashan Rudyan di Jhanti Bhaibhit Kardi Si. And Gujarati also has its own verb, relav, that has the meaning to spread, about liquid. Originally, it is a causative from the old verb rel, with the meaning to flow quickly. For instance, Nal Mathi Vahetu Pani Relai Gayu. Hindi has the verb utra, which is not used in other described languages. It has two main meanings: to be on the surface of the water, and related to it meaning to be lighter than water and not sink, float up. For instance, kamal ke utrate patte, floating lotus petals, ya lash utrana lagi, the body surfaced shortly. I'm not reading the whole sentence because I'll not be able to cover the whole thing if I read every sentence. But please, if you have some comments on particular sentence, then we can return to it. And again, it is used about floating, the verb utra. घास फूस छाप पर वस्तुएं सभी पानी में उतरा रही थीं. Everything was floating in the water. And utra describes only the floating of objects on the surface of significant volume of water. In relation to small objects in a small volume of water or other liquid, only the verb ter is used. So you can say दूध में मेवों के टुकड़े te rahe the, but you can say this मेवों के टुकड़े उतरा रहे थे. And less commonly, the verb utra is used with animate subject. For example, a person resting in the water. Wo pani par utra raha hai. He lies on the water resting. The use of the verb utra in Hindi is rather limited. Some speakers don't know this verb or know it from literature but don't use it. Some informants accept free variation of utra and ter, but only in the context describing the property of the object to be lighter than water and not sink. For instance, the cork is so light that if you throw it into the water, it won't sink. Halka hai, to wo utrata ya terta hai. So to sum up, we can say that only beh and its cognates describe both the water flow and animate or inanimate figure passively drifting with the current. The Gujarati verb relav denotes spreading of liquid on a horizontal surface, and Punjabi verb ruh denotes the drifting of figure with the current. The prototypical meaning of the verb ter and its cognates can be defined as moving in a liquid medium, but not together with the liquid flow. The figure may be both an actively moving living being and an inanimate object moving along the surface of the water. Ter in the meaning to passively move on the surface of the water is a synonym for the verb utra. Unlike ter, utra describes only movement in a small amount of liquid. The verb dub and its cognates indicate only immersion in water and being covered by water. The verb utra, when describing vertical movement, indicates only ascent. Beh and its cognates only descent. Ter and its cognates both descent and ascent. But actually, the meaning going down is one of the theme of the verb dub, but ter can be used for the meaning descent or ascent only with necessary adverbs, upar ya niche. And ruh and relav cannot indicate vertical movement, as far as I understood. Actually, whatever I'm saying, I'll be very grateful for all kinds of comments because, of course, we had native speakers, but if we have more comments, that will very much improve our work. So now, if we looked at lexical typology, when they analyzed 50 languages, they tried to give some rules of lexicalization of these frames. And most frequent are two configurations. Active swimming opposed to passive drifting and floating, as it's in Persian, Korean, and other languages. And the second is our case. Uncontrolled drifting opposed to both swimming and floating. No, vessels I'm not discussing because really there are rare cases of these vessels. And they don't have their own verbs. New Indo-Aryan languages are grouped with our Hakas language in this respect. There exist some other systems, for instance, floating and drifting opposed to vessels and opposed to swimming in Tamil. Swimming and floating opposed to drifting and opposed to vessels in Komi. And there is a suggestion, hypothesis that there are improbable or maybe impossible systems like vessels and floating opposed to swimming and drifting, or vessels and drifting opposed to swimming and floating. But of course, such universals are always a challenge. After that, all linguists are trying to find languages where these impossible universals are found. And one more important thing is Western New Indo-Aryan languages belong to predominantly verb-framed languages. And in verb-framed languages, the manner verb is compulsory only in case it shows special attention toward the manner of movement. For instance, Russian belongs to satellite frame languages. We can't use any other verb, but only the verb describing the mode of action. For instance, in 29, ye dekkar ki hamare piche magarmash terta araha. We were trying to ask some people to translate from Russian into Hindi this phrase. And in Russian, you can say only swimming. You can't say anything else. And they were not many people were not using swimming. And then we understood that they don't use swimming because swimming is used only when it is necessary to use it. For instance, let's see 30. Larka do bar dusre kinare par gaya or vapas aya. If we don't need to emphasize that the boy crossed the river by swimming and not on the boat, we will use terkar. Otherwise, we will not use it. But in Russian and in all satellite verb languages, we have to use only the verb swim and nothing else. Now I'll speak about the metaphors of the described verbs. It's interesting that the most common metaphors are formed from the peripheral direct meaning of the verb ter. Basic metaphorical meanings arise from such peripheral direct meanings as non-directional movement of inanimate subjects in a liquid, or being on the surface of a liquid, but not from the most frequent meaning active swimming. In the aquatic environment, the aquatic environment is usually replaced by airspace through which move real objects, clouds, smoke, etc. And usually there are clouds, babel, terra, het. The clouds are floating across the sky. There can be also kites floating in the sky. The sounds of music floating in the air. Or a more rare example, of course, when something is not floating at all. For instance, the tops of the buildings, they are not floating, but they're so far that it seems to us that they're floating. So हमारे शहरों में इमारतें इतनी ऊंची हैं कि उनकी चोटियां बादलों में तैरती दिखाई देती हैं. Even some feelings can also float. For instance, Christmas जो अब तक घर के बाहर हवा में तैर रहा था, अब घर के अंदर ही मेरे हृदय में भी उतरने लगा था. The holiday feeling is also floating in Hindi. And the lines of the poems are floating in somebody's heart. कविता की पंक्तियां उसके मन में तैर रही हैं. In his mind. The hands can float in the folds of darkness. Hath andhare ki paraton par teh rahe hain. The eyes may be floating in the void. Aankhein शून्य में तैर रही थीं. Sunlight floats in the apartment. Ujala तैर रहा है. Some feelings like उस आदमी की उपस्थिति मेरे आसपास तैर रही थी. Swim in the eyes is a special group of metaphors associated with those uses of the verb ter which express the idea of movement in a closed vessel. For instance, कल्पना अब भी तैर रही है आंखों में picture is still floating in my mind's eyes. In addition to the meaning to be in front of mind's eyes, there is another metaphor, swim in the eyes. It is more close to the primary meaning, being on surface. This metaphor describes the expression of the eyes. For instance, Ankhom meterte hazarum prashan, thousands of questions floating in her eyes. Now we were speaking about the peripheral meaning of the verb ter and its cognates, but the main meaning, the active movement in the water, also became the source of the metaphor. And the metaphor is to struggle with difficulties. For instance, मैं तेरे थक गई हूँ, मुझे कोई किनारा चाहिए means I am tired of struggling with difficulties of life. I want to take rest and marry, in this case. A metaphor close to the previous one, overcoming difficulties and resistance of the surrounding world, is more readily accepted by speakers of Punjabi and Rajasthani and is not always approved by speakers of Hindi and Gujarati. For instance, in Punjabi, Diwali hundiyan o tar gaya. He almost went bankrupt, but sailed out, escaped bankruptcy. Ya Marwari, Rameshri Latri Nikliyansu Unrisat Piriyan Tirgi. Ramesh won the lottery, 7 of his generations floated out. They will be able to live without difficulties. But this metaphor is always used when it is connected with the sea. For instance, Sipian chon kade tam moti vimilange sagar je okrangda has ke tarange. We will someday extract pearls from shells if laughing we swim across an ocean of difficulties. And in Hindi also this metaphor is used, but for metaphors, Hindi uses the old doublet of the verb ter, the tar, which actually comes from Sanskrit and had there the meaning to cross something. So that is this meaning, to cross the flow of samsara, is present in all New Indo-Aryan languages. Barekash Metha Aj Votar Gaya means he sailed away, he died. I have the same sentences in Rajasthani, Gujarati, and they can be also in Punjabi. Another metaphor is to be able to swim, to be an expert in some field. By the way, that is a very popular metaphor in Russian. In Russian, we say he swims as a fish in water. Means he understands linguistics or something like that. But in New Indo-Aryan, I found it only in Rajasthani. Maybe I was not looking carefully, and it may be found in some other languages. For instance, Gani bajane mein yo admi tiryora hai. Tiryora is a resultative participle. It means that this person is good at singing and playing a musical instrument. Another metaphor is directional movement in water, appearance. Aankhon mein dil ke tutne se pani ter gaya. Tears of heartache welled up. And other examples of this kind. Hindi Uttara also has metaphors for like float up, go over age. Dudh Uttara gaya. The milk has boiled away. Or the second type of metaphors, be on the surface of liquid, be noticeable, visible. आजकल शहर में Kabuli बहुत उतराए हैं, means now Kabulis are very visible in the city. And one more metaphor to be seen, to be noticeable, then is derived, gives the meaning to bother, disturb someone. ये बच्चा कहना नहीं मानता, साथ ही साथ उतराता फिरता है. This child disturbs us all the time. I'll be also interested if maybe some colleagues can give some ideas about this, the verb utrana, because the ideas were very controversial among our native speakers. Now the metaphors of the verb beh and its cognates. No, of course, two direct meanings are becoming a source for metaphors. The first meaning is movement of the flow of water. The second, movement of an object along with the flow of water. Remarkable metonymic shift occurs when the same word means drifting on the current and flow of the current itself. This metonymic shift is by no means universal. It doesn't exist, for instance, in English or in Russian, but it can be observed in more than 15 languages of the sample we were discussing. And it exists in Chinese, Japanese, Italian, Swedish, Lithuanian, Polish, Hakkas. So a movement of the flow of water usually gives metaphors connected with wind. For instance, Thandi Hawa Beh Rahi. The same in Punjabi, Vagdipon, floating wind. But different things may float. Or be more exact, drift. For instance, pigly arc, dissolved fire can flow. Urja can flow, electricity can flow through the wire. Beer, the crowd of people can drift along the road. Or darkness may float in the heart. Or maybe here it should be better to write drift, not float. I'm not sure. Actually, English is not my mother tongue, so sometimes English translation may be corrected also. Now, the movement with the flow of water also gives many metaphors, like, for instance, the clouds drifted north. Badal utar ki or beh rahe the. Yeah, the song "A Gramin Pranay Git Beh Kar Aaya Hai." Love song came through the air. Or even in political texts, Desh वैसे ही खुली बाजार व्यवस्था की आंधी में बह चुका है. और अंधियां आ गई तो तेरा क्या होगा देशिया. Though my country, you have already drifted away in the hurricane of free market. And one can drift under somebody's influence. For the heroine, उसके स्वभाव, उसके व्यक्तित्व, उसकी भाषा के प्रभाव में बहती चली गई. She was fascinated by the hero's character, his personality, his eloquence. Float away or drift away can give the meaning disappear. For instance, shabd jare to beh chale. Words crumbled and floated away. Time drifted away. Again in the film, this Khalnayak Keh do ki me yahan naihum margai ganga, begai ganga. And the tears may disappear. He wept his desires along with tears in Gujarati. Tena Suni Sathe Ashropan Ve Gain. The whales usually drifts away, and some pictures may drift away. More interesting is the metaphorical meaning, movement on the ground. I also already mentioned it. In 60, where a stream of people was moving along the road. For Hindi and Gujarati, this metaphor is less common than for Punjabi and Rajasthani. I mean, in Hindi, it is used when there is really a crowd of people. But what is interesting for Rajasthani, there can be one person moving. For instance, I saw Ram walking down the road, and the verb vehna is used. Or white elephant can also walk through the forest, and again this verb is used. In Punjabi, the cart tanga may drift. But what is interesting, in Punjabi, tanga may drift, tanga vagriasi. But we can't replace cart by a horse, possibly because the cart is more in contact with the ground than a galloping horse. So I think that the assumption about the implicit presence of the seam adhesion to the surface, sliding, in the meaning of the verb beh and its cognates, is very necessary, and it is also confirmed by the next example. Marahivra me katar begi, the dagger pierced my heart. Now, another metaphor, go with the flow of life without much effort. Kuch log jivan ki nadi mein terte, kuch behte hain. Only in Punjabi there is a metaphorical meaning. To see sat ikathiyan vagdian hoyu, seven are floating together against me. The same is may be said about the meanings, etc. But usually it is not, at least I couldn't find it in other languages. You know, the problem of studying these metaphors is that people are bilingual. So sometimes they have the same, this deep structure for two languages, and the metaphors may then come from one language to another. So, and it is difficult to find people who know only Rajasthani. I mean, you may find them going there, but they will not know many metaphors, being not very well educated. In Gujarati, the verb vahe inherited the old Indo-Aryan transitive semantics. Actually, in Sanskrit, it had the meaning to carry. And it inherited it. Atul beman anaj, ya javabdari no bar, vaheto hato. Atul carried a load of 2 man of grain, or burden of responsibility. Now the metaphors of the verb dubna and its cognates. The meaning to be covered by water gives the metaphor to be covered by some other substance. For instance, बाई के नन्हे हाथ पांव रक्यों में डूब गए थे और ये सब बताते हुए उसका चेहरा गहरे अवसाद में डूब गया था. Objects covered with water become invisible to the observer. Hence, the metaphor to disappear comes. The most common metaphors are the sunset, the loss of money, reputation, and all that. So the sunset or rupees are disappearing, डूब जाते हैं or इज्जत डूब गई. I'll skip all these very common examples. The metaphors of immersion are the mirror opposite of the metaphors derived from the direct meaning be covered by water. The latter describe the situation from the point of view of an observer, from whose field of view the immersed object disappears. In the metaphors of immersion, the center of the described situation becomes the immersed and thus alienated from the outside world. So the most common subjects of these metaphors are thought, fantasies, grief. For instance, मैं ख्यालों में कुछ ऐसी डूबी कि तुम्हें देख ही ना पाए, या गुजराती सतीश कल्पना में डूबी गयो खतों. Usually there are negative emotions, but like hatasha, pira, etc. But sometimes positive emotions can also come. For instance, prem में डूबकर, कुछ समझेंगे. So to sum up, we can say that the frequency of metaphorical shifts does not coincide with the frequency of direct meanings of the word. And it is very well clear from the verb terna and of other verbs also like dubna. And metaphors preserve archaic meanings in all languages. Most metaphorical shifts in Hindi, Rajasthani, Punjabi, and Gujarati are similar, which is easy to explain by the common origin of the languages under consideration. However, metaphorical derivations are not identical in all described languages. Only in Gujarati, the verb vahe retained the the transitive meaning carry, which comes from Sanskrit, both in direct and figurative meaning. Only in Rajasthani, there exists metaphor to be able to swim, to be an expert in some field. And again, the verb vah denotes moving on the ground of a single animate or inanimate figure. Only in Punjabi, there is metaphor movement with the flow, joint movement. Now, do I have time to speak about posture and change of posture verbs?
Yes, please. Go on.
Okay. This I'll not speak about these verbs in detail because I see that there is very little time. That was again the project of this Moscow typological school. And here are the main questions we posed. But now I'll speak only about Hindi and Russian, and only about the contrastive study of the lexical semantics of the posture and change of posture verbs, the use of posture verbs as locative verbs, and about the metaphorization of the posture and change of posture verbs in these two languages. There are two reasons why I chose these two languages. Of course, one is pedagogical because we are teaching Hindi to Russians and sometimes vice versa. And it is very important to see the differences because it is very easy to teach grammar, but it is much more difficult to teach these semantic differences. And also because there are some typological differences. For instance, the description of location in two languages. So I'll speak about two languages very shortly. So, of course, basic meanings are anthropocentric. That is a standing man, that is a sitting man, that is will be described in the same way in all languages. That is a lying man, and the main semantic component of sitting is folded position. And usually human postures are extended for animals, like sitting, standing, lying, dogs. But the descriptions of animals' posture are not similar in different languages. This cow is standing both in Hindi and Russian, but this cow is sitting in Hindi and lying in Russian. In Hindi, only dead cow will be lying. That is my picture made in Goa. Now, posture is not important for small animals and birds. Like in Hindi, in Russian, both these frogs are sitting. And this bird is sitting both in Hindi and in Russian, though in fact it is standing. Mice are sitting both in Hindi and in Russians. And this snake is sitting in Hindi. And here it's sat down means it prepared for attacking you, which is not possible in Russian. So the languages may be arranged along the continuum with respect to the use of posture verbs versus copula to describe the location of inanimate objects. And in Hindi or in Finnish, the copula dominates completely. In English, there is more of a balance, whereas the posture verbs dominate in Russian and also in German and Swedish. So the great difficulty for Hindi speakers and the speakers of other Indian languages who are learning Russian is to remember the posture verbs instead of using location verbs for inanimate objects. In Russian, these plates are standing upon the table, though in Hindi we shall say rakhe hue hain ya pade hain. But if they are on the floor, they will be lying on the floor because that is not the proper place for them. In Hindi, these plates will be pade hain, and this will be rakhe ya pade hain. The slippers in Russian are standing on the floor because that is a proper place for them. Though they are not, they are in horizontal position, not in vertical position, and they are not really standing. And they are lying on the table because that is a wrong place for them. The bread or pie is sitting in the oven. When there is a relations container, and that is also very funny, usually taken with surprise for the people who use copula to describe location. In Russian, the cork is sitting in the bottle. Again, the relations container. And the nail is also sitting in the wall. But It should be in Russian. Russian needs the ceiling contact between the object and medium. For instance, in Dutch, it is enough to use these verbs to sit when there is ceiling contact between the object and surface. For instance, you can say Band-Aid is sitting on the hand in Dutch, or the word is sitting on the face. Nothing like that is possible in Russian, because we need content container. Now I'll speak about some metaphorical extensions of the meanings to sit and in Hindi in comparison with Russian. To sit, be in the stationary condition for a long time, forced or not forced. For instance, roti ke bina baithna, havalat mein baithna, ek ahar par baithna. And the same, absolutely the same in Russian we can say сидеть без хлеба, сидеть в тюрьме, сидеть на диете. It's interesting that the languages belonging to different groups of in the Aryan stock have so many similar metaphors. Now, be in the stationary condition, be fixed to one place, or be in conformity with something. Ye kot acha bitha hai, again the same we can say in Russian, это пальто хорошо сидит, or sit on the chair to be appropriate for some official kind of work. For instance, ye mantri ke pad par acha bitha hai. It's not exactly like that in Russian, but we can say he has been sitting on this post for 5 years. Something like that we can say. I don't know, something happened. My slides don't move. I don't know what happened. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Try again. Just move the next slide.
What should I don't know? It doesn't move. What shall I do?
Can you press escape and just come to the outline mode?
What shall I do?
Press escape for a moment.
Yes. I'm pressing again. It doesn't work. What else should I press?
Or you just rejoin. You just stop presenting and do it again.
But if I don't press escape, I don't know what to do, because
to use your own metaphor, it is sitting somewhere, but you're not able to see. So you just press stop presenting.
I can't press anything because it stopped.
You mean it froze?
Yes, it froze.
Okay, then you just it's moving now.
No, yes.
Yes, we can see that. Next slide.
No. Now it's okay. Now it's went on. Did I speak about this? To sit down. Now it is sit down. Move downward, both in Hindi and Russian. Hawai jahaz pani par baith gaye.
No, you have. You please talk about this. You haven't. Can you?
So I'm continuing talking about the metaphorical extensions. So I covered this page. Yes.
Yes.
Now
please
I am going to another page to sit down.
Yes.
Move downward, land. For instance, Hawai jahaz pani par baith gaya is the same in Russian. Sit down, move downward.
ಈಗ ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ದಿನ
Zamin बैठने के खतरे से यहाँ इमारत बनाना मना है. Again, absolutely the same in Russian. Are you talking about this example or what? Sit down, move downward, disappear. For instance, about sun, सूरज बैठने का वक्त निकट गया. Or sink, submerge. कुछ मिनट के बाद पनडुब्बी पानी के नीचे बैठ गई. That is impossible in Russian. To hide is possible in both languages. For instance, बदमाश को पता चला कि पुलिस उसे लड़की का हत्यारा समझ रही है, इसलिए उसने तली पर बैठने का निश्चय किया. Possible in Russian also. He sat on this tali. Move downward, think about the eyes. पति की मृत्यु की वजह से उसकी आंखें बैठ गई. We can say to sit only about voice. We can't say it about eyes or mind. In Hindi, you can say this sit about everything. I mean about eyes, mind, etc. Move downward, get upset. It's only in Hindi. आज मेरा अपने पति से झगड़ा हो गया, इसलिए मेरा मन बैठ गया. Move down, get spoiled, stop functioning. About body parts, as I said, that is both in Hindi and Russian. ये आश्चर्य की बात नहीं है कि उसका गला बैठ गया. क्या इतने जोर से चीखना चाहिए था? But in Hindi we can use more parts of body than in Russian. For instance, we can say दिमाग बैठ गया, but we can't say it in Russian. Only in Hindi we can say sit about official institutions. पहले तो इस इलाके में 3 बैंक थे, पर अब एक भी नहीं रहा, सब बैठ गए. Now, extensions of the meaning of uthna, stand up, get up, rise. We can use it about heavenly bodies. आकाश में चांद उठा और दुनिया चांदनी से भर गई. Both in Hindi and Russian. To rise, to appear. एकाएक हवा उठी, मकानों पर ध्वज फहराने लगे. मेरे मन में तरह तरह के विचार उठ रहे थे. To rise, to appear, stop to exist. Only in Hindi. यहाँ बहुत से चीनी के कारखाने थे, सब उठ गए. यह सती होने की रीति अब हिंदुस्तान से उठ गई. To rise, to disappear, stop to exist, be spent. तुम्हारे यहाँ कितने का घी रोज उठता है. To rise, to disappear, stop to exist, die. सड़क की दुर्घटना के कारण बहुत लोग जिंदगी से उठ गए. So common metaphors for sit: to be for a long time in a stationary condition, to be in conformity with something. For sit down, to land about Hawaii Jahaz, to set about the sun, to get spoiled, stop functioning. For get up, rise, rise about the sun, appear about the wind. So thank you very much. I hope now I will not be frozen, and I can now can I can should I close this one also?
Yes, you can stop presenting.
So how to stop presenting?
You see that button on the top of your screen. I can't read Russian, but I guess that's the one. Yes.
Here.
You press on that. Yes. No, but I think we lost her.
No, Uma ma'am, she by mistake pressed the button for closing her entire Google Meet. That wasn't the button, it was the one below. She
Yes,
by mistake went to
below
the
me.
other.
Okay, no problem. She will come back. One moment. Before that, you can get ready with your questions. I'll just give her a call on her phone. Oh, she has joined. Yeah. Liudmila, can you show us your face? Can you keep the video on?
Her video is on, Uma ma'am. We can see her, but we can't hear her. Her audio is
She
off.
needs to unmute herself. Professor Liudmila,
Oh.
please unmute yourself.
Yes, now it's okay, yes?
Yes,
Do
but
you
I
hear
can't
me?
see her video on my screen. No. We can't see you. We can hear you. Anyway, thank you for your fantastic talk. Now we can see you. That was a very
You can see
interesting
me.
talk.
I see myself.
Yes,
And
we
you.
can see you.
Okay.
Thank you. So,
So
Dhanyavad.
I'll be very grateful for comments because we would like to continue this work. And of course,
Yes.
comments will be very necessary.
Of course, this is a very important domain to look into, especially not only in Western Indo-Aryan, specifically, but also in other Indo-Aryan languages, and to extend it further even in other Indian languages like Dravidian, Tibeto-Burmanic, and other families. Main thing is I was very much happy to see that in such a short span of time, you started taking us into a journey of swimming, floating, sailing, and drifting. And then you made us sit for a while with the verbs of position for almost an hour and 15 minutes. It was lovely to look into both the denotative and the connotative meanings and also the figurative meanings of these verbs. Though you said your sample has 50 languages in some cases and some cases 13 or 15, I think you did not have time to cover the domain of pain, though you said you might give us that. But otherwise, we were very much enlightened with your views on the verbs of aqua motion and the verbs of position. Now I invite comments, feedback, and questions from the audience. Feel free to interact with the speaker. You can ask her questions directly, or you may put it in the chat box. Yes, Ajay Malik, you have a question. Liudmila, someone has asked, have you also worked on Haryanvi?
Which language?
Haryanvi. Can you see the chat box? There is only one question.
No, it was Punjabi, literary standard. But is there anything special in Haryanvi?
Can Ajay interact or someone who knows Haryanvi, Professor Shonaram Sharma?
Yes, good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, yes. Please go on.
Yes, ma'am. I'm a student
I
of
don't
Masters
hear.
here in Delhi.
So, is there anything special in Haryanvi?
So, Ajay, do you have anything to say specifically about this particular these verbs in Haryanvi, do you have any differences of opinion compared to the Hindi situation or the Punjabi situation? Okay, I think it was a general question. He wanted to know whether he says nothing special as of now. Maybe
No, he
anyone
answered
else?
it. No,
Yeah.
he answered in chat.
Okay. So any other questions or comments? Please feel free. Yes, Professor Bhatt. Professor Bhatt, you have to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Welcome and thanks, Professor Liudmila, for a very beautiful presentation, very exhaustive. You, in fact, touched so many verbs in this category of swimming and floating and all that. I have certain, reservations about the verb behna, which you used. Some of the examples which you quoted about that behna, I found that they may be very relevant semantically, but grammatically I don't think they are in use. I found them 2 or 3 examples are not grammatically correct. So that portion needs a relook, I think, as I have understood it. But otherwise, it was very good presentation. Almost you have covered so many languages, many Indian and of course your own mother tongue, Russian also, and other languages also, European languages also, and you quoted. It was really very wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But, we took examples from books or stories and, novels, etc. We didn't. So I'll be very grateful if I could send you these sentences and you tell what is not correct grammatically. Which language do you mean? Hindi or Punjabi or Rajasthani or Gujarati?
No, some in Hindi and a few in Punjabi also. Like Rudiya and Rulana and Bahna, which are almost synonymous. 2 or 3 sentences, I think needed to look, but I don't have the slides with me. It's difficult. I didn't note down. It's only in my memory. So
thank you. I will not try to open it again now. Yes, it will take too much time. But I'll be very grateful.
If you're able to send across some sentences which you read about the verb bahna, then I should be able to point out directly what they meant to say. Thank you.
For Behna, this Vagna, I had co-author Professor Charanjit Singh, who is a Punjabi speaker. So we can look at them together with him.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So I'll do it just now after 5 minutes, if you allow.
Okay, so any other question? Any other questions or feedback? Still others think about questions. I thought like I would ask you a couple of them. So it was nice you looked into aqua motion. Do you, maybe you have already worked, or do you have any plans to look into other verbs which are related, like the verbs of aero motion and the verbs of terra motion? How are they? Like, because in some languages, see, whatever you're using for verbs of position in in the case of Dravidian, at least, it won't be used in the same sense like the Indo-Aryan. We do have selectional restrictions on the agents of sitting and the agents of standing. But I think if we look into other dominant translational motion verbs, for example, aeromotion verbs like flying or hovering, or terramotion verbs like walking, crawling, driving, riding. So, what do you have any views on this, or have you started working on them?
Yes, thank you. It might be a very interesting continuation of this work. You know, frankly speaking, I was choosing the projects, I was participating in the projects of this Moscow school, because when you are participating in typological project, when they are taking in consideration 50 languages or even 30 languages, then these languages can be compared. Besides that, they make questionnaires and all that. So your work becomes easier. But of course, it's not necessary. And they had many projects where my students participated. It is rotation verbs, the sounds, verbs of sounds, verbs of destruction. No, about pain, I already told you. The verb, they had a separate project about playing, the verbs of playing. So in all these projects, both me and my students participated somehow. And I also worked for some time on this verb framed and satellite framed languages. And I have also a paper dedicated to this problem, where I also used different motion verbs and tried to somehow compare my work and the work of Bhuvan and Narasimha, dedicated to the same problem. So thank you very much. I think it will be very good to continue in the way you are proposing.
Yeah, I have one more question. See, you looked into the typology of these languages, right? So, though you gave some general claims, do you have any distinctive finding, like feature, which separates the Western Indo-Aryan languages from the other languages which use the same verb frame typology?
No, so I mentioned a little bit. I said that there are different configurations, and there one for Tamil and other languages, one was for Hakas and New Indo-Aryan languages, one for Korean and some other languages. For instance, lexicalization of active swimming and floating, opposed to drifting. That is one. As for metaphorical shifts, then I also tried to compare, but I had no time to speak about it. There are some common metaphors, like, for instance, to swim in the eyes or something like that. And there are rare metaphors. So which are typical only for New Indo-Aryan languages. Now I can list them. So of course, when you work with many languages, it becomes much more interesting.
Okay, thank you. Parul Bharadwaj had a question. Parul?
Hello, ma'am. It was very nice hearing from you. It was very informative. I have only one question. I'm learning linguistics. I am a student. I had a question about the verb pada rehna or rakha jana. So, as we see that there is a difference between the thing being active and passive when like swimming and floating. So when I think of pada rehna and rakha jana, I think the difference is more like being attention paid to the object. So if some object is kept on purpose at a place, it's like rakha jana, and if it's like thrown carelessly or not paid much attention to, that is pada rehna. So can it be the contrast between the verbs like passivity and being active?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it properly. Umaji, can you repeat it once more?
Parul,
Yes,
can
yes.
you put the two forms of the verbs in the chat box for her? She's
Yes,
asking the usages. She's talking about the usages. I'm requesting her to put it in the chat box.
Which words?
One usage. Parul, can you put them in the chat box?
No, maybe just to repeat these words once more.
I'm just wondering that as
She
we
has
think of
She has put them in the chat box.
No, I
Pada,
understood, yes. Para, hona,
Rehna,
and rakha.
Rakha
No,
jana.
that is, of course, para means something that is not carefully put, yes? And rakha means that something you carefully put and wanted to put it to this place. Yeah, that is clear that there is difference between these two meanings. And para has neutral meaning, yes? Yaha kuch kagas pare hain. It means both that they are just, nobody needs them, and that somebody put them and wants to take them. And rakha means that these papers are very necessary. Yeah, that is true.
Thank you.
Yes, Tariq Khan.
This is in response to the query that Parul Bhardwaj has raised. The two examples that she has cited here are not exactly verbs which are being discussed here. These are conjunct verbs. Pada rehna and rakha jana, they are not exactly verbs of the kind that Professor Khokhlova was discussing. These are of a different nature altogether. Also, when you want to distinguish between pada rehna and rakha jana, you may want to consider agency into it, because pada rehna can happen on its own. A tree can fall and stay as it is, whereas rakha jana will apply somebody keeping it. So another person's involvement or another object's or phenomena's involvement becomes necessary. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Any other question, comments, or feedback?
Professor Khokhlova, I would like to congratulate you for this wonderful talk. There was one term that you used that was utra for a ship floating in the water. Okay, so this was something which I had not thought about as a native speaker also of Hindi, because tairna comes more often naturally to us than utarna, but we understand that a ship has to get into water before it starts actually floating. And when it gets into water, that is basically utarna, to get into. But then after that, this word does not apply for swimming or floating.
No, I'm sorry, it's not utarna. It is utrana.
Utrana.
Utrana. I told that not every Hindi speaker accepts this verb.
Okay.
But I'll be very grateful if you look at the examples They have nothing to do with Uttarna.
Yeah, I also found it very unfamiliar, so I related it with Uttarna. I'm sorry, but I could not relate with it.
It is. I gave examples from Shabd Sagar, etc. So
Okay.
actually, all the examples I didn't. I have a list of authors whom they belong to. Including this Uttarana. But I said that not everybody accepts it, and some people accept all meanings, and some accept only to be light and not drown, like the cork is to light, so it will not drown, only in this sense.
Maybe connecting it with Sanskrit, Avtaran is coming down, but I may be wrong here. So.
Maybe it is the same root that is in this terna. I think I'll check. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could it have been utarna, as in usko pani mein utarna, like putting it down on water, like that way? No, by mistake.
No. It's interesting that most people don't accept it. Yes, though it is both in literature and in dictionaries, and even metaphorical shifts are there. So. Professor Tarikan, may I send you these examples so that you could
yes,
comment on them?
Professor Khokhlova, it is something that adds to my knowledge about this verb. I was not aware of it. So probably if you can share the examples that you have cited, I can also have a look at that and find out how this might have descended in the usages in some parts of the speech region. Probably because Hindi is spoken in a very wide area, this could be prevalent in some areas which I'm not aware of. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Excuse me. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. In one of the Western Pahari language called Kangdi, we have cognate this tarna, that is swim and float both. It has a large number of metaphorical meanings, like suppose you put the dead body's bones in Ganges, then you say dant tarna and tarna. So they are quite different from Hindi, and there are a number of metaphorical meaning. So tarna means not only sort of swimming or floating, but this means he became successful, or he just was very happy with the things. Wo tar gaya. Tar gaya means he got success in something. So there are large number of, I think, metaphorical meaning. So it's a cognate with terna, but we have tarna or tarna.
Yes. So I gave examples of metaphorical meanings like crossing, escaping from some difficulty.
Yes.
So what you are saying is very close to it. Just to escape from difficulties, be happy, to get success.
Yeah, they are related meaning. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so it was a wonderful talk, and it was really nice to have you with us today, because this is the beginning of 2022, and we started with interesting talk on Western Indo-Aryan languages, And we have, of course, 8 more talks scheduled. I hope we will continue that. Thank you, Professor Khokhlova, for sparing your valuable time with us and for agreeing to the double request from my side. One is to deliver your talk in this lecture series commemorating the Foundation Day of CIL, and also for making it special to remember our dear Professor Omkarnath Kaul on his birthday, because this time of the year usually we used to have the ECOSOL. So I'm already thinking like maybe you are sitting here with us and we are commemorating that. And also, once again, Merry Christmas, Orthodox Church, Russian Orthodox Church Christmas to you and all the Russian friends over there. So with this note, I would like to end today's session, and I once again thank you on behalf of the Institute and on behalf of everyone who is present here. I also extend my thanks to all of you who have taken your time from your day-to-day work and to be with us, and who also participated in this discussion. Thank you and have a lovely 2022, and please stay safe. Okay, bye.
Thank you very much.
Uma.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my project with you and getting a lot of interesting commentary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Professor Uma, for inviting for this talk.
Thank you, Uma,
Yeah,
for
thank you,
arranging a
everyone.
wonderful
All of you.
lecture from the guest speaker of this day. We are enjoyed, and really it is, we need to learn more and more from the elderly people like them who are really working so much deep into the, research, ocean. Thank you very much. Congratulations, madam, for the lecture you have delivered for us. Thank you.
very much.
Okay, thank you everybody once again. So I would share the YouTube links with the speaker, Liudmila. I will send it to you and we'll be in touch. Have a lovely evening and a wonderful 2022 and beyond. Bye.
Thank you.